Good morning, I am back. You may or may not have noticed that I didn't do one of these for the past couple of weeks, and that was a conscious decision. It wasn't that I forgot. Um, and that's really the reason for me doing that is going to be what I'm going to be talking about today. So basically what happened, it was nothing major, but I had the first migraine that I've had in several years. So I used to get them all the time. I first started getting them. I still have fairly vivid memories about this starting when I was sort of late on in primary school, and I had started getting these headaches that I used to try my best to hide from mum and dad, but they could usually spot when I had one because I generally could be found resting my head against this cold tile surface that we had in the house. And it was usually my mum, in fairness, that would go, "Have you got a headache?" And I'd be like, "Mm-hmm." So I can't really remember the specifics, but I do have a vivid memory of being sent to see a paediatrician at a local hospital. I think probably the one and only time I ever did see a paediatrician when I was a child. And essentially being put on these like hideous anti-migraine tablets. They were pretty horrible just to take as and when. And so they used to come periodically, and the game changer came. It was actually my mum that figured it out. My very much non-medical but very common sense wielding mother figured it out. She said it was generally on days off from school, so like bank holidays and stuff, or just summer holidays and things in general. So I tended to sleep a bit later. Not eat anything in the morning time, and those tended to be the days where I could fairly reliably get a migraine. So we figured that was definitely one of the triggers, was was not eating regularly. So then for many years I just kind of managed them. I never really had any bad ones, unless for some reason, for circumstances that weren't always within my control, I wasn't able to eat regularly. I would occasionally get a slightly worse end of the spectrum one. But anyway, I do have a purpose behind whittering on about migraines. So basically when I changed my lifestyle a few years ago, that was one of the things that changed, was that I just basically did not get the migraines anymore, which was great, because I think part of my headaches was also something called chronic analgesia misuse headache. So not that I was abusing analgesics or anything, but just, straightforward things like paracetamol and Brufen. I had an incredibly low threshold to take them, because I knew that was often the key to stopping it developing into a full-blown migraine. But yeah, it's worth having a little look up if you're someone who also suffers from headachy type disorders. There's a reasonable chance that you have an element of chronic analgesia misuse headache. So I'm really reluctant now to take them. There has to be a pretty good reason, even very, very simple analgesics. Anyway, I have just spent 3 minutes talking about my migraines, but it just gives you a little bit of context. I haven't had one for ages. And then a couple of weeks ago I was at work, and I don't know exactly what happened. I just missed a couple of steps in terms of my normal routine, and then work was really busy, so I didn't get a chance to eat or drink the caffeine that I normally would have had, and it raises some other questions about things like caffeine dependence and stuff, but that's a topic for another day. So basically, to cut a long story short, I ended up with a migraine, and it was a fairly full-blown one, and it took me a bit aback because I hadn't had one for so many years. And I kind of did the thing that I'm not very comfortable doing, and I had to kind of put my hand up and go, I'm really concerned about my current level of functioning. And my lovely colleague had said, well, why don't you go and find somewhere to lie down or go home? I was reluctant to go home, but I took myself off and found somewhere to lie down, and basically just had a nap for a bit, took some analgesia, and just tried to kind of get it to subside, which it did, fortunately. But it was a little bit of an alarm bell for me. Nothing major. I wasn't worried about the cause of the headache, but I had been writing in my journal recently endlessly about being quite tired and needing to make more time for self-care. And basically I kept noting that I was tired and that I needed to build in some more time for self-care, and then was doing absolutely nothing about it. So it did make me think about it quite a lot. So I decided to take a week or two off writing any content or filming any videos, just to take something off my plate and just try to have a bit of an easier week, which I did. So I'm just conscious of the fact that I'm back doing all this again, and I am slightly concerned that I haven't really addressed the problem, but I am at least aware of it, and as we'll talk about, that's kind of the first step. So how good are you basically at looking after yourself? I feel like none of us really take enough ownership over it, and that's really what it comes down to. So the first thing we need to do is to develop some self-awareness, and it's probably much better if you're watching this and you're thinking about it, actually, if you use this as a prompt for, am I taking good enough care of myself? Am I building in enough time to rest, recover, kind of nurture the you areas of your identity, I suppose? Are you doing the things that re-energize you? Are you prioritizing things like sleep and nutrition, getting some physical activity in, the kinds of things that are hopefully going to keep you around on the planet for a bit longer? So please try and use this as a prompt to do that if you haven't done already. Because the other way that these realizations come is from a bolt from the blue. Unfortunately, on this occasion, it's not a serious bolt from the blue for me. We're not talking about collapsing and having a massive heart attack or some major health scare. I had a headache. It's not the end of the world, but it is an opportunity to try and redress the balance a little bit. And it is a balance ultimately, because at the end of the day, I do keep saying, people say you can have it all. You can't genuinely, truly have it all. Even the people who are the most successful people in the world, even if you go back in history, these people had the same time that we all have in every day, but then equally there's no way they got to where they got without making sacrifices somewhere, whether that be health, whether that be relationships, who knows. So you just need to make sure that you're aware of that balance and you're just nourishing that kind of side of you. You're looking after yourself. So self-awareness is one thing. Don't let it get to the point where you have to have a big health scare or a big serious bolt from the blue to make some changes, because it might be too late at that point. So please do it now. And the other thing then, the other key pillar of this for me then, is taking ownership. So this is really, really important. My observation from working in the NHS for the last 15 years is that we don't have that culture in our country of taking ownership over our own health. And I'm not here to preach to anyone, I'm just stating an observation. There are lots of things that are out with your control in this world. There are a lot of things that can be within your control, and many of us are not taking ownership over them. We feel like it's not our job to do that, which is a bit bizarre. And we feel like it's someone else's job. It's the doctor's job to help me lose weight, or well, it's not my fault that my blood pressure's not under control. My doctor just hasn't put me on the right medication. That kind of thing. There are so many things that could be done before you get to that point. You are in control of things like how much stress you're exposed to a degree, how much sleep you get, what you put in your body in terms of eating and drinking and other things that we won't necessarily open the box on. Even just little things like not being someone who doesn't cover up adequately or put sun cream on when they go out in the sun. Take ownership of the fact that either by the action or the inaction, you are making a vote for the risk of things happening to you in the future. So the thing to bear in mind is that you can never completely make the risk zero, but you can substantially reduce it by doing these things. Like, there's never any guarantees. So even the fittest, healthiest people in the world can theoretically drop down dead from a heart attack. That can happen. And I get this whole philosophy of, well, you might as well enjoy life because it can end in a flicker. But actually what you can do is that you can play the odds on that. The choices that you make on a daily basis, those consistent things that you do, can make a massive impact on the odds of you being around to do all the things you want to do, achieve all the things you want to achieve, see your family grow up, you know, whatever your vision is for the future. So those were the two things that I wanted to get across from that point of view, and these are the two things that I'm certainly working on at the moment. I've got that self-awareness that, you know, when I'm pushing myself too hard, and I do have a tendency to do that, and I'm also just thinking about, you know, what factors can I take ownership of. So self-awareness and ownership are the two takeaway points. Anyway, let me know if any of this resonates with you. Share the video with people if you think they'll find it interesting, and follow some of the stuff on the social media channels, and I will catch up with you soon.